It is the 15th of April, 1943. In the small, tightly knit community of Stone Mountain, Georgia, a boy is born into a modest family with deep southern roots. Growing up in this quiet town, framed by the towering pine trees and rich red clay, his early years are defined by an uncomplicated, earthy way of life. Days are spent exploring the outdoors, where he learns to appreciate nature's calm and balance, fishing in creeks and racing through forest trails with friends. Even as a boy, he feels a powerful pull toward fairness and responsibility, perhaps inspired by the hard-working spirit of his neighbours and the steadfast values passed down by his parents. From childhood, he displays an unusually keen sense of empathy, always quick to step in if someone is being mistreated. Friends and family recall a boy with a quiet determination, deeply respectful, yet unafraid to speak his mind when he senses something isn't right. He carries a weighty sense of integrity, even as he navigates his teenage years, grounded in Stone Mountain's traditions and a community that values both hard work and a clear moral code. As he grows up under the strong Georgian sun, with a quiet strength and an unyielding sense of justice, the world is unknowingly preparing itself to meet Hugh Thompson Jr. Hugh Thompson's journey began to take shape after he walked across the stage at Stone Mountain High School, proudly clutching his diploma on June 5, 1961. With the world before him, he made the bold decision to enlist in the United States Navy, diving headfirst into a new chapter as a heavy equipment operator with a Naval Mobile Construction Battalion, stationed in Atlanta, Georgia. It was here, in the midst of the clang of machinery and the camaraderie of service, that he also found love, marrying Palmer Borgman in 1963. Following his honourable discharge in 1964, Thompson returned to Stone Mountain, seeking the warmth of family life as he settled into a quieter existence. He turned his ambitions towards mortuary science, earning his license as a funeral director. However, as the echoes of war and conflict began to resonate across the nation with the onset of Vietnam, Thompson felt the undeniable call to serve once more. In 1966 he re-enlisted, this time into the United States Army, driven by the sense of duty and an unwavering commitment to protect his country. He undertook the rigorous Warrant Officer flight program, training at Fort Walters in Texas and Fort Rucker in Alabama, where he honed his skills as a pilot. By late December 1967, at just 25 years old, Thompson found himself bound for Vietnam, assigned to Company B of the 123rd Aviation Battalion in the 23rd Infantry Division. The stage was set for a profound journey that would test his resolve and ultimately define his legacy. It is March 16th, 1968. In the tranquil landscape of Sơn My, Quang Ngai Province, South Vietnam. Hugh Thompson pilots his Hiller OH-23 Raven helicopter, accompanied by his crew, Lawrence Colburn, the gunner, and Glenn Andreotti, the crew chief. Thompson and his crew are dispatched to support Task Force Barker's search and destroy operations, aimed at neutralising what Army intelligence believes to be a Viet Cong stronghold within the hamlets of My Lai and My Khe. However, unbeknownst to the soldiers, the information relayed by military intelligence was gravely flawed, painting the village as a fortified enemy enclave rather than the home to unarmed, neutral, rice-farming families who had little involvement in the conflict. As dawn broke and the morning mist lifts, reconnaissance aircraft including Thompson's helicopter, scoured the area. But the skies remained clear and eerily silent, void of any enemy fire. At approximately 7:30 a.m, following a brief but intense artillery and helicopter gunship barrage, the soldiers of Company C, 1st Battalion, enter the village. Led by Captain Ernest Medina and Lieutenant William Calley, they descended onto Sern Mai. What began as a routine operation would soon spiral into an unthinkable tragedy, as the soldiers entered a community that was unprepared for the horror that was about to unfold. Upon entering Sern Mai, the soldiers of Company C unleashed a torrent of unspeakable horrors upon the unsuspecting villagers. The serene landscape was shattered as they moved through Song Mi village, transforming the once peaceful hamlet into a scene of chaos and despair. Officers and soldiers committed atrocities, brutally murdering victims in cold blood, raping women and setting fires to homes that had stood for generations. The chilling sounds of gunfire echoed through the air, drowning out the cries of women and children who found themselves caught in a nightmare they could never have anticipated. In one of the most harrowing accounts, 1st Platoon, led by Lieutenant Calley, corralled approximately 70 to 80 villagers, prominently women, children and old men, into an irrigation ditch. What followed was a grotesque display of violence as they were systematically murdered with knives, bayonets, grenades and small arms fire, their lives extinguished with a merciless efficiency that left the landscape littered with bodies. Hugh Thompson, piloting his helicopter above the chaos, initially believed that the devastation below was the result of an artillery bombardment. However, reality struck with agonizing clarity when he witnessed the execution of a wounded civilian woman, Nguyen Thi Tao. Recounting the incident, Thompson said, "Then we saw a young girl about 20 years old, lying on the grass. We could see that she was unarmed and wounded in the chest. We marked her with smoke because we saw a squad not too far away. The smoke was green, meaning it was safe to approach. Red would have meant the opposite. We were hovering 6 feet off the ground, not more than 20 feet away, when Captain Medina came over, kicked her, stepped back, and finished her off. He did it right in front of us. When we saw Medina do that, it clicked. It was our guys doing the killing." As the My Lai Massacre unfolded, Hugh Thompson discovered a scene that defied comprehension. He found the irrigation ditch, a brutal act that would haunt him forever. In that moment, Thompson felt a profound sense of obligation as a soldier and a human being. He grabbed his radio and reported to his superiors, his voice heavy with disbelief. "It looks like there's an awful lot of unnecessary killing going on down there. Something ain't right about this. There's bodies everywhere." His words were not just a description, they were a desperate call for clarity and action amidst the chaos. But amidst the horror, hope flickered as Thompson spotted movement in the ditch. He quickly made the decision to land his helicopter, compelled by an unyielding instinct to help those who had survived. The sight of movement among the dead transformed Thompson from an observer to a saviour. As Thompson landed, Lieutenant Calley approached. "Just following orders," Calley said. "Orders? What orders?" Thompson replied. "Just following." "But these are human beings, unarmed civilians, sir." "Look, Thompson, this is my show. I'm in charge here. This ain't your concern." "Yeah, great job. You better get in that chopper and mind your own business." You've not heard the last of this. As Thompson was speaking, Sergeant David Mitchell fired into the irrigation ditch, killing any civilians still moving. In disbelief and shock, Thompson's crew returned to the helicopter. They'd spotted a group of civilians in the northwest corner of the village, fleeing the advancing American soldiers from Company C. Realising the company were intent on murdering the group, Thompson landed his helicopter between the advancing group and the villagers. He turned to Colburn and Andreotti and ordered them to shoot the men in 2nd Platoon if they attempted to kill any of the fleeing civilians. While the two of them trained their guns on 2nd Platoon, Thompson located as many civilians as he could and persuaded them to follow him to a safer location. He ensured their evacuation with the help of 2 UH-1 Huey pilots he was friends with. Thompson was now low on fuel and prepared to return to base. Andreotti spotted movement in the ditch as Thompson and Colburn jumped out and guarded either side of the chopper. Andreotti headed towards the ditch. Standing on the bloodied, bullet-ridden bodies he lifted the lifeless corpse of a girl no older than 15. Under her, a child of 4 or 5, shaking uncontrollably with shock, made eye contact with him. Without hesitation, he gathered the child to his hip, quickly checking for other survivors. There were none. After transporting the wounded child to the hospital, Thompson flew back to Task Force Barker HQ. His heart raced. A mix of anger fueled his resolve, and he prepared to report the massacre just as he witnessed. The horrors of the day weighed on him heavily, and he knew he had to act. Once he arrived, Thompson did not hesitate. He angrily reported to his superiors, painting a grim picture of the chaos that had unfolded in the village. "There's bodies everywhere, and there's a ditch full of bodies. Something isn't right here." His report quickly reached Lieutenant Colonel Frank Barker, the operations overall commander. The gravity of Thompson's words pierced through the operational hubbub. Barker immediately radioed ground forces to cease the killings. Thompson, determined to ensure no more civilians were harmed and that the wounded were evacuated, prepared to return to the village, resolute in his mission to bring an end to the senseless violence. After the massacre, Hugh Thompson filed an official report with a clarity and conviction that defined the tight-lipped silence of all around him. It wasn't long before he found himself face to face with Colonel Oran Henderson, the commander of the 11th Infantry Brigade. Thompson's words were serious enough to reach the senior officers of the American division. His report was damning, enough to force the command to abandon similar operations planned against villages in neighbouring provinces. Without Thompson's intervention, hundreds, perhaps thousands more innocent villagers might have met the same fate as those at My Lai. But within the army ranks, silence prevailed. The higher-ups quickly buried the truth of My Lai under mountains of paperwork, and the official story twisted Thompson's actions into something altogether more different. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the citation lauded his bravery in saving a child caught in the crossfire, even claiming that his efforts had enhanced Vietnamese-American relations. But after Thompson read the citation, appalled, knowing it was a grotesque fabrication, he threw the award away. Thompson's service didn't end there. He continued flying reconnaissance missions, pressing on despite the danger. His helicopter was hit by enemy fire on 8 different missions. On one of those missions, enemy machine guns brought down his craft, causing a brutal crash that broke his back. His days of combat were over, and he was whisked to Japan for a long and grueling recovery. Yet, even after his war wounds began to heal, Thompson would come to realise the true cost of standing up for what he knew was right. When the massacre finally reached public ears, Thompson was summoned to testify in front of Congress in a closed-door session. Facing the House Armed Services Committee, he encountered harsh opposition. Chairman Mendel Rivers condemned Thompson, not as a hero, but as a disgrace, the only one in the massacre worthy of punishment. The chairman tried, unsuccessfully, to have Thompson court-martialed. Outside Washington, he faced a new storm. Instead of praise, he received death threats. Phone calls warned him to stay silent. Mutilated animals appeared on his porch. It was an unthinkable response to a man whose only crime was refusing to stay silent. Years passed, but Thompson's commitment to justice never wavered. His remaining years in the army took him to Fort Rucker, to the classrooms of instructor pilots, later leading him through the career that saw assignments in Korea, Fort Hood and Hawaii. His life took a quieter, steadier rhythm until, in 1983, he retired, having achieved the rank of Major. His military career, though decorated and notable, would forever be defined not by medals, not by citations, but by the courage it took to confront the darkest side of war. In 1998, exactly 3 decades to the day after the horror at Saint My, the United States Army made a long overdue acknowledgement. Hugh Thompson, along with his crewmates Lawrence Colburn and Glenn Andriotta, were awarded the Soldier's Medal, the Army's highest honour for bravery that does not involve direct combat. For Andriotta, who had been killed in action not long after the massacre, it was a posthumous honour. The solemn ceremony brought to light the heroism of these men, whose actions at My Lai, though obscured for years, had quietly set an example of integrity and courage. Major General Michael Ackerman addressed the audience, his words underscoring the gravity of the moment. It was the ability to do the right thing, even at the risk of their personal safety, he said, that guided Thompson, Colburn and Andriotta to act. They set a standard for all soldiers to follow, and they did so under impossible circumstances, acting not for glory, but from a place of profound moral clarity. Just days later, Senator Max Cleland of Georgia entered a tribute into the U.S. official Senate record, honouring their courage. These men, Cleland wrote, are true examples of American patriotism at its best. It was a rare, quiet moment of redemption in a story overshadowed by violence, tragedy and silence. For Thompson, Colburn and Andriotta, this recognition stood as a testament to the power of a single act of conscience, the kind that ripples through time, ultimately proving that true valour goes beyond combat. It lies in the choice to protect life, even at a great personal risk. At the age of 62, after a long and arduous battle with cancer, Hugh Thompson was finally at peace. On January 6, 2006, in the quiet of the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Pineville, Louisiana, Thompson passed away, his body at last giving out after years of physical and emotional toll. At his side was Lawrence Colburn, his friend and crewmate from that fateful day in Vietnam, who had come all the way from Atlanta to be there in his final moments. Thompson's life was honoured with the deepest respect. In Lafayette, Louisiana, he was laid to rest with full military honours. A solemn 3-volley salute echoing through the air, followed by a helicopter flyover in recognition of his extraordinary service. A month later, Congressman Charles Bustani of Louisiana made a statement in Congress, ensuring that Thompson's legacy would be remembered by all. The United States has lost a true hero, Bustani said, and the state of Louisiana has lost a devoted leader and dear friend. Hugh Thompson's journey had ended, but the ripples of his bravery and unwavering moral conviction would continue to inspire long after his passing.